Here's luck and a fair wind to you. And remember, dead men tell no tales.
Ladies and gentlemen, did we enjoy the fireworks?
My name is Kofuzi, and this is a review of a Disney cruise from a runner's perspective. My wife and I have two daughters aged 7 and 2, and we went on this cruise with my sister and her family. She has a 6-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter, so ages between 2 and 7, boys and girls. Both my sister's family and my family, we've been to Disney World before, but this was both of our first times on a Disney cruise. And in terms of running, last year I ran 2 marathons, 2 half marathons, and I think I also ran a 10-mile race and a 5K. I usually average about 40 to 45 miles per week if you're considering the entire year. I think I had a peak week last summer of about 75 miles for the week as a lead up to the Chicago Marathon, and I run year round here in Chicago where I'm doing this part of the video from. So running is pretty important to me, and being able to get those miles while on a Disney cruise was something that I was particularly concerned about, and I wasn't really able to find that much information on it on YouTube as I was preparing for the trip. So hopefully this is going to be helpful for all you runners out there. But before we get into the review itself, a couple of quick disclosures. Nothing in this video was paid for by Disney. Travel expenses, accommodations, any add-ons that we were able to experience during the cruise, those were all paid for by my family or by my sister's family. Disney paid for none of it. They don't know that I'm making this video, so none of the opinions expressed or any of the content are going to be in any way controlled or influenced by Disney or anyone from Disney. So with that out of the way, what I think I'm going to do is divide this review up into 4 main categories: food, running, amenities of the ship, and events or activities that we could do while on board. And now I want to talk about why we picked a Disney cruise in the first place. It is my dad's 70th birthday this year, and my sister wanted to do something really big for it, so she suggested that we all go on a cruise together. And we picked a Disney cruise in particular because my daughter has a peanut allergy. And in our prior experiences with Disney, and from what we heard from other parents in the allergy family community, we've heard that Disney is very accommodating and well versed in handling a variety of different kinds of allergies and other things that might need accommodating. And so that was the natural first choice for us, is to go on a Disney cruise. And fortunately, we were able to make that work out with all of our schedules and with the cruise schedules. So we were very happy to be on board a Disney cruise ship. But I was worried about what I was going to eat as a runner. And I was also really confused by this whole rotational dining concept and the idea that you have to, months ahead of time, pick at what time in the evening for all the evenings while on board the ship you might want to eat dinner. That just seems like really counterintuitive to me and just super crazy. But the rotational dining is actually really simple, and I don't know why they call it this. the term is just super misleading and confusing. I thought for some reason that the rotational dining concept was that there was some part of the ship that was like a sit and spin restaurant, that you get to see a different view or portion of a dining area or a view from the ship. But basically what it is you eat at a different restaurant on each night, and you're assigned to a different one on a different night while you're on the ship. But your servers all come with you. So you have like a server team, at least for dinner, that comes with you. So you see the same server, there's like a second server, and then there's the same head server who's in charge of a lot of the server teams. So you get to really know who your servers are, but that's really also important, not in terms from a service perspective, but also from an allergy perspective. So our server team, Sebastian was our waiter. He was really excellent, and he remembered that my daughter had a peanut allergy, and he always reminded us to make it easier on us and also on the kitchen staff, that we could pre-order or order ahead for the following dinner what we wanted our daughter to have, which was, for me, just ordering food ahead of time, it's crazy. That's why they give you a menu when you sit down to eat, is because you don't know before you sit down to eat what you want to eat. But for kids, it's relatively simple. There's only a few things, and no matter which kind of restaurant you are at for the night, lots of different places to eat, and each has slightly different kinds of food. But for the kids, you could pretty much order the same thing no matter where you were. And so we were able to order that ahead of time and put in that order for the following day what my daughter needed to eat. And for me, what I thought was fantastic is that for dinners, you get a menu and you can order an appetizer, an entree, and a dessert. And if you wanted to, you can order multiple appetizers or multiple dinners, which it's all included in terms of the way that the cost structure goes. And so I was able to do that. I typically ordered multiple appetizers at a time. The server will give you a recommendation depending on which restaurant you're in and which night of the cruise it is as to what he thinks or she thinks is the best. And our server was usually pretty spot on in terms of recommending things for us. And some of the things that he thought might not be great for that particular night, sometimes I didn't heed that warning, and it turns out he was usually right on that too. But there was always plenty for me to eat, and it wasn't like cruise fare like what I thought it would be. Some of the food was surprising to me, and I thought it was pretty good. My favorite thing though, to just eat at Cabanas, which was the buffet from the ship, and then you can kind of go pick whatever you want to eat. I'm mostly a vegetarian. I think technically I'd be considered a pescatarian. I would consider myself more as like a social omnivore. I prefer to eat mostly vegetables. I will occasionally eat seafood, but if I'm a guest at someone's house or if it's a special holiday like Thanksgiving, I will occasionally eat meat. For me, accommodating that was relatively easy. I usually chose to eat a lot of seafood, but there were also usually a lot of pretty good vegetarian options. Although with the vegetarian dishes, it always seemed like basically they were about to make a regular dish, but just didn't put the protein on top. Whenever I ordered a vegetarian dish, I always ordered 2 of them, because then you had like one size of a meal. In between meals, you could always go to Cabanas. If Cabanas wasn't open, the buffet, there were a couple other places where you could always get pizza, or there was a grill. So you could get like burgers, hot dogs, French fries. There's always salads or wraps that you can get. And there's always somewhere where you could get fresh fruit, which is something that I appreciated. The other thing that was a big deal for me was coffee. As soon as I got on the boat, I was looking for the coffee every day. I was always constantly wanting another coffee, and that was something that was easily accommodatable as well. On the 11th deck, which is kind of where everything happens, there are these soda fountains, multiple of them, where you could fill up and drink as much soda as you wanted. I don't drink soda, but by that spot as well, that's where there was coffee, and there was almost always coffee. Although when I would wake up very early in the morning, and when my parents, they also are very early risers, would wake up, they complained that they couldn't get any coffee on board the ship before like 6 a.m. So that was a problem for them. I was usually running at that time, and so it wasn't too bad of a problem for me, although I do usually like to have a cup of coffee in my hotel room, like when I'm traveling, before I head out for a run, so I did miss that a little bit. The rooms are really tiny, so there's no room for a real coffee machine in there, nor would I really want to be brewing coffee in my room on a ship. Not that it rocked all that much. I do have vertigo, and so I was very concerned about motion sickness. But the rooms, although small, had plenty of space for us, and they have lots of staff on hand to make sure that they're constantly kind of coming into the room and tidying things up, making sure you have everything you need, emptying out the garbages, setting up the rooms, whether it's during the day or at the nighttime, because they had these bunk beds that would fall out of this. So it's kind of like a Murphy bed, but instead of coming out from the wall, it would drop down from the ceiling. Super cool. My daughters always thought it was a magic trick. But that was pretty awesome. So there's constantly staff taking care of you. I felt the boat moving, especially while sleeping a lot, and especially while eating. But I didn't really feel any motion sickness, thankfully, until the very last night. Then I was pretty much by around the middle of dinner, for the rest of the night, I was out of commission. On the last night, there was just, I don't know what was going on. Maybe it was like the accumulation of the motion from the entire week that finally caught up to me. But that's the day I got really motion sick. But other than that, I didn't throw up on board. I kind of came close that last night. But the motion sickness wasn't too bad, which is also a big concern of mine. And in terms of running, I didn't have any motion sickness while running, and I was able to run as much as I wanted to run. There's two main ways you can run on the ship, and one is on the deck. On the 4th floor of the ship, there is a deck. They make it sound like there's like a running track or a running surface. It's not a running surface. It's just a deck on board the ship, and you can run on it. It looks like a synthetic wood type material. I got out there this first morning, which was the second day. You get on board like the middle of the day on the first day, and there's like a welcome ceremony, and then the kids want to go swimming. I didn't get a chance to run on that Monday, but on Tuesday, the first day, I did get a chance to go running. I got out there around 5 a.m. in the morning. And I ran for an hour on that deck. At that point, I got out there and everything was wet, and I thought maybe overnight it had either stormed or maybe ocean spray had kind of come up on deck, but it just turns out they're just power washing the deck at that time because they think no one's up. But I was up and I was running and definitely getting in the way of what they were trying to do. But there's people constantly cleaning on this ship, which makes sense with that many people in such a small area. Not that the ship was small or not that the rooms were small, but you're in a compact area. You constantly have to be cleaning, and they definitely were on board this ship. But even with the surface being wet, I was able to run just fine. I'm certain that it's a feature of whatever that material is that even when wet, it's not slippery. But the decks are open to the air on the sides of the boat. I don't know the nautical terms of it. I'm going to say the left and the right-hand sides of the boat. But when you get to the front and the bottom, the way to make it a complete loop, the material stays the same, but you're kind of running in a hallway as you go through the front and then as you circle through the back. So that was a little bit unusual. There's mirrors, like bubble mirrors at the top, so you could see if anyone's coming around the corner. And some of those corners were relatively tight. No like complete 90-degree angles, but it did remind me a little bit of when we would run indoors in high school during the winter time. There was like a square area that we could run around in the hallways at school, and that had complete 90-degree turns. And by the end of a school day, hallways get slippery and dusty. That was not a great experience. This reminded me of that, but not like that, because the surface was definitely safe to run on. I didn't feel like I was slipping around even though it was wet. And it was a little bit weird running through some of those like metal hallways, because none of those areas were areas that passengers can go. All the doors were marked for crew member access only. So it was kind of weird to be back there. I felt like I was somewhere where I shouldn't have been. But I was able to run. And I ran for about an hour on that first night, hoping to catch a sunrise, but it was a little bit cloudy and the sun didn't quite rise by the time my hour or 45 minutes or so that I wanted to run on that deck was up at 6 a.m., which is when the gym opened up. So at 6 o'clock in the morning, I then went up to the gym on, I think it's on the 11th floor towards the front of the ship. There's a gym and it looks out over the water, and I thought it would be pretty awesome. So I went in there, and by 6 o'clock on that first morning on the ship, there was like maybe 15 to 20 treadmills, and a lot of them, more than half of them, were filled up with other runners already. And I got there maybe like 6:10, 6:15. So within minutes of the place opening, the place was already like not full, but there was a lot of people in there. There's ellipticals, there's bikes, there's weights, so lots of different things that you can do. I got on the treadmill, and unfortunately, for whatever reason, I thought it would be looking straight, at least in terms of the windows that were available. I mean, you're on the 11th floor. I thought maybe we'd have like a forward-facing view. So I thought maybe as I was running on the treadmill, I could like look out to the direction the boat was traveling. That wasn't the case. The treadmills all faced to the side of the boat, which was disorienting a little bit for me. So I'm running on the treadmill, and it has one of those things where you can go on a virtual course. The one that I picked for that first day was running through the sequoia forests. And it was a lot hillier, so the machine kept going up and down. But at the same time, the boat was slightly kind of rocking. And so I couldn't tell sometimes if I was going down an incline or up an incline in terms of the change. And then also the boat would slightly rock. So it was just a little bit disorienting to run on. But nevertheless, I was able to run like another 45 minutes or an hour that first morning, getting about 11 miles and change in between the two sessions that first morning. So that was my running on the first day. The second day of running was on the island. That was Wednesday. We didn't get off the boat the first stop in Nassau in the Bahamas. We decided to just stay on the boat that day. The following day, we did get off the ship at Castaway Cay, Disney's private island. And there I ran in the Castaway Cay 5K. Here's a link to the video and also to the race recap if you're looking specifically for information on that. But overall, I had a really fun time running that event. But it also kind of limited me. I only got 3.1 miles in that day. I guess I could have kept running the event twice to get 6 miles or 10K in for the day, which I probably should have. But, you know, I felt like a good 3.1 miles for the 5K was good enough for the day. And so I just kind of left it there. The following day, I ran again on the boat, but this time I switched the order. While it was very dark, I went up and ran from 6 to 7 in the treadmill. And then after that, from 7 to about 8, I ran down on deck 4 while it was a little bit brighter out. By day kind of 4 of the cruise, I think a lot of the runners had maybe lost some of their enthusiasm for getting up very early, right when the gym opened. So that day, I think there was only like 2 or 3 other runners, although it wasn't like the gym was empty. There was other people on bikes, ellipticals, lifting weights. I think some people were getting like personal training sessions. So there's lots of options. You could take classes. Lots of options for people to stay active even though they're still on a cruise. The final day, we ended up docking at like 7 in the morning, something like that. And I was pretty seasick the night before, so my original plan was to get up really early, like 4:30, and then go run on the deck for a little bit. But I was just feeling so terrible from my motion sickness that I just slept as long as possible. I didn't even set my bags out. Like the night before you get off the ship for the final time, you're supposed to like pack all the stuff that you're not going to need overnight and put it out in the hallway, and they'll kind of have it waiting for you when you get off the ship. I didn't do any of that. My wife took care of all of that for her stuff and for the kids' stuff because I was just basically curled up in bed. I'm trying not to throw up. I think I got a total of about 25 miles in, which wasn't bad for an entire week, but I did take 2 days off. Monday I took off on the day we got on the boat, and then Friday I took off the day we got off the boat. From there we went basically directly to the airport, hung out there for a wonderful 6 hours before our flight, and then flew home. By the time we got home, it was past dinner time, and we were all pretty exhausted, so I didn't really want to go out for a run because I was also meeting up with a buddy the following morning very early to go for a run once I got back home to Chicago. So no need to like kind of kill myself for a vacation week of running, but 25 miles for 3 days of running or 5 days on the trip, I think wasn't too bad, and overall a lot better than I thought things were going to be in terms of my ability to run on a boat. In terms of amenities that were on the ship, other than having a gym, it had a couple of different places to swim. There was like a little area for toddlers or anyone in a swim diaper to play around in. It was like Finding Nemo themed. There was a Mickey pool, which was small. It was only about 2 feet deep, but kids in swim diapers were not allowed in there, which was a little bit frustrating. And then there was also I think it was a Donald pool, one that had like 5 feet of depth. But all those pools were pretty small and always really crowded. So my kids love swimming. They'd be happy if we just drove out to the suburbs and stayed in an Embassy Suites out in like Naperville for a couple of days, as long as they got to swim like in between every meal and nap time. But there were just so many people all the time in any of the pools that there really wasn't any swimming. Now there is a huge jumbo screen that's out there that you can look at, and they played like Disney movies on it pretty much throughout the entire trip. But it essentially just turned into like a really weird large bath with an iPad or a giant iPad where the kids could watch movies. So that's pretty much all that our kids, but also everyone else's kids really did when they were in any of the pools. It's because you couldn't really move around too much if it was busy. It reminded me also a lot of like that game where there's the fish that will like open their mouths and you're supposed to catch them with the magnets, and the fish kind of rotate around, because everyone, it was like shoulder to shoulder in there. When I was in there, I was just like constantly accidentally bumping into someone. So a little bit unusual. I thought there would be more area to swim for some reason. And then the toddler area really wasn't that great. I thought it would be more of like, kind of like, we've spent a lot of time at Timber Ridge is a water resort that we enjoy that has lots of stuff, kind of zero depth pools and water splash pad type areas for little ones to play in. The one on the Disney Dream really wasn't all that great, so the baby was a little bit disappointed and was really wanting to get in with the bigger kids, her cousins and her sister, in the 2-foot depth pool, and she had a hard time understanding why she couldn't go in there, and it's because she's not potty trained. She's really close. Another couple of months. By the next time we would ever go on a cruise, it won't be an issue. But if you do have very young ones that are in swim diapers, they're going to feel a little bit left out in terms of some of the swim offerings. Now, there's also 2 different water slides on the ship that my daughter and her cousin, who's about the same age, really enjoyed. There's a big one called the Aqueduct, and I rode that with her, and she couldn't ride that by herself. She was a little bit too short. And so we rode that together, and that one takes you kind of like around the boat or around the ship, and it's a really fun ride. It's clear, so you could see like everything going on the deck. There was also a smaller yellow slide. It had a couple more twists and turns to it, but it was something that the kids could ride on their own, and they had a lot of fun with that. There's a much smaller line for that one, so that's the one that I tended to try to push them towards, although it was fun riding with them on that huge aqueduct slide. The other thing that was a concern to me in terms of living basically on this ship for 5 days was TV. Now, my kids are a little bit screen time obsessed, and yes, I probably allow them a lot more than they should be having, but in terms of just kind of waking up in the morning and going to bed at night, it's kind of a part of our routine is to have some sort of screen going, and I know that's, again, not like the way that everyone else does it, but that's just how my family does things. And I was worried that being out at sea, we weren't going to really have any access to television, but there was access to some kind of like satellite TV. So I'm not sure which TV stations it was, but people were able to like watch news and some regular type of programming. I believe there was something off the East Coast. I'm not sure which city, but also more importantly, there was a great kind of on-demand system built into the TVs, or that the TVs were connected to, if you want to get technical. And so you could either get ship information, so different things that were happening on board the ship that day. So they had new stuff every day that you could learn about the ship and what's going on. But also they had really great on-demand stuff, all Disney products, but a good variety for both my 2-year-old. So she watched a lot of Sophia the First shows. And for the 7-year-old, the theme for the cruise was, it was a pirate cruise. And she was able to watch as many Pirates of the Caribbean movies as she can handle. They're new to her, and they're still a little bit on the scary side. She wanted to watch a ton of them, but we didn't watch a ton of them. If you have a 7-year-old, you kind of understand how that goes. But outside of swimming, there was always something to do. There were a lot of really great live shows, and just like when I go to Disney World, the highlights of my trip are when we could sit down and watch the live shows. I always think that they're really well done and super entertaining, but my daughter, at least the 7-year-old, was on the edge of her seat for all the shows that she watched. I really enjoyed them, except for the one where I was super motion sick during. I still enjoyed it, but I was really motion sick during one of them, and so kind of slumped down in the chair a little bit. But otherwise, I highly recommend going to see the shows. And also another big part of the ship was the character meetups. And so you would have this app that you could look at on your phone. Internet is not really an option when you're on board. You can get it. It's super expensive. I think 100 megabytes was like $30 that you could burn through if you wanted to. If you wanted a gig, it would be a lot more than that. I don't remember. I have the paper somewhere. I'll try to put it into the description in case that's something you're really looking for. But I know it was something that I was looking for, but just to give you guys a heads up, from the people that I talked to, the internet access was really easy to burn through and also really not that fast either on download or upload. So while I was gone, in terms of being able to upload videos to YouTube, each of my videos runs anywhere from 500 to 2 gigabytes in size. So I knew that that wouldn't really be an option for me, so I had to make my videos ahead of time. I probably could have checked in on my emails while I was on the cruise, but I elected not to. But there is an app that you can use on board, which is a nice way of texting between the other family members that you have. So if they have the app too, you can look at it, and you also have a full schedule of the day. It's not the most easy or intuitive app to kind of navigate around. I found it frustrating. By the end of the trip, I kind of got the hang of it, but it took me a couple of days to get used to it. So surprisingly frustrating in terms of using that app, but you could figure out like when you can meet, you know, Mickey, Minnie, any of the princesses, Peter Pan, Captain Hook, lots of different characters, and you had multiple opportunities to meet most of these characters. And so like if you missed it on one particular day because you were swimming or because you had an appointment at the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, which was an add-on that we did for our older daughter, that was something that you could do. And so that was kind of the primary thing that we did, other than shows and swim time and meal times, which were usually pretty highly like scheduled. The other thing that we spent most of our time doing was getting in line so we can meet all the different characters, getting their autograph, taking our pictures with them, and things like that. So the kids really enjoyed it. I think that if we had more boys in the mix, maybe that would have been less interesting because the characters are kind of princess heavy in terms of who you get a chance to meet, but also I don't know if on a different cruise, I think there's like an Avengers themed cruise, I'm assuming you get to meet more comic book characters, so it could be different. It could just be a function of the cruise that we were on. The other thing that we really enjoyed was I think at least once a day there was some sort of performance or dance, aside from kind of the shows, which were kind of like the plays or the musicals that they put on. The characters would come out and there would be some sort of dance or dance party. There was a character dance party, which was the baby's probably favorite thing that she saw because she got to get really close to Minnie Mouse, who was her favorite character. They always had something where they would kind of come and dance, and there'd be a little musical number. If the weather was nice, it would be out on the 11th floor on the top deck. If it wasn't, as it rained a couple of times during our trip, it was held indoors in the big kind of atrium area where a lot of events happen. So there was always some place that they could move the event in case of bad weather. But those were pretty much daily. Sometimes there was 2 of them a day, one kind of in the morning, one in the evening. And so there was always something to go attend. It was almost got to the point where I felt like it was work, where things were so scheduled, where it wasn't like, what do we want to do today? It was like, where do we have to be next? And so that was, for me, very different from how I normally vacation. I don't know if that's how things normally go on cruise ships, but it is a little bit more like how kind of a Disney trip goes. Like in Disney World, you're constantly trying to maximize your time, get in line for the next ride, get ready for your next fast pass or whatever you have coming up next. So things are very regimented and you got to move, move, move. I definitely felt that on the ship, and it was a little bit stressful for me to manage that, but at the same time I also didn't want to have my kids miss out on any of these opportunities, which I guess only further feeds into that stress cycle. So that was a little bit different for me. It wasn't my favorite part of it. I don't know really how you solve that problem and get around it. I guess it's just one of those, you know what, it's a Disney trip, you're going to be busy, you're constantly going to be moving. But the kids weren't ever bored, so I guess that's what it takes. When they did kind of get close to being bored, or when they were like had met pretty much all the characters there were to meet, there is the Oceaneers Club, which is a place where kids can go, and you can pretty much just drop off your kids if they're over a certain age. I think 3 and potty trained is kind of the minimum, and I think you could be up to in the teens to be in the Oceaneers Club. And there's lots of stuff to do there. It's very well supervised, lots of staff there interacting with the kids, so it's not like you're just dumping them in a room with video games on the wall and wishing them good luck. But that's where they could fly the Millennium Falcon. They could go into Andy's room and play with all the Toy Story toys. Or not play with the toys, but like interact with large versions of the Toy Story toys. And there was just lots of things to do. There was video games that they could play, dancing, other interactive games that they would put on. So lots of fun stuff. And my daughter and my nephew, they spent a couple of hours in there. At one point we did send the babies or the toddlers to the nursery, which is an additional cost to send kids to the nursery. But that was nice because we had like an hour where all the parents, my family, my sister's family, we were childless. So we went with my parents up to have just a quiet cup of coffee in the adults only area. We didn't really spend too much time in there because we were usually with our kids for most of the trip. So I don't have too much experience on that aspect of the cruise. Most of the stuff we did was centered around the 7 and 6-year-old and what kind of they wanted to do, and the toddlers always kind of just followed along and just wanted to do what their big sister or brother was doing, which is what little siblings kind of always want. On the pirate night, that was the first night that the girls and also my nephew were able to get makeovers, and so they got dressed up as pirates, as did all the parents. And we got them, like my nephew had like a mustache on, which was pretty funny, and my daughter got definitely geared up to be a pirate. And that night there was supposed to be fireworks out on the top deck, so it was supposed to be pirate night for dinner, pirate theme for the fireworks, and also a dance party afterwards, but inclement weather prevented that from happening, so the days are a little bit mixed up. So for the pirate fireworks, we weren't dressed up as pirates, but at least we were able to get it all in. And the fireworks show wasn't as grand as you might see like if you go to Magic Kingdom, but in terms of fireworks that can be shot from a moving vessel at sea, they were pretty impressive. I'd like to say that my toddler really enjoyed it, but she fell asleep. She was so tired by that point of the trip that she fell asleep, even though the fireworks on that night were before 8 p.m. She was just so tired and exhausted from having so much fun, and she slept through all the fireworks and even through some of the dance party afterwards, so pretty amazing. Overall, it was a whirlwind trip. The Friday that you get off the boat, it feels a little bit frantic to me. They pretty much invite you to go up to breakfast and shuffle you straight out of the boat from there, which I understand. They got to turn the boat over, get ready for the next cruise to get on. But like just moving that many people through that amount of space is something that gets my anxiety up a little bit. Yeah, I'm not the best traveler. And whenever there's just large groups of people, I get a little bit flustered. Having to deal with the elevator system. There's 6 elevators, any of them, at least the main bank that I typically was in, and the one that most people typically wanted to take. And sometimes, you know, I would either walk to the other side of the ship to try and take a different bank of elevators, or just try to avoid the crowds. I just always felt like I was spending a lot of time waiting for the elevators. You could certainly take stairs, but you know, a lot of times I'm also carrying the toddler and just kind of trying to wrangle my entire family up flights of stairs while other families are also doing the same thing and sometimes going in different directions. That got to be a little bit of a pain point for me, but overall a very small thing. Other just kind of miscellaneous things that I do want to cover. You can pretty much always get soft serve ice cream at any time that a child would be up, and even most of the times when adults would be up too. It's similar to the coffee. I think the hours are relatively similar. And so people were constantly eating soft serve ice cream, which was interesting. We didn't have our daughter eat it. I think that she could have probably eaten the soft serve ice cream and the cones, but we had her avoid it. We did bring a ton of snacks for her to eat in case for any of the desserts. We always skipped desserts for her as well. We brought like her favorite candies and chocolate bars and the things that we know that she can eat, although we were given many assurances that it would be okay for a peanut allergy. We just felt more comfortable that way. Desserts are always just, I think, a whole nother level of anxiety for an allergy parent. Booze, in terms of booze on the ship, I was worried that I'd be motion sick, so I didn't drink while I was on the ship. I did have a couple of beers while I was on the Castaway Cay Island, but other than that, no booze for me. It is extra if you do want to partake in alcohol, so that's going to be something else. You just sign it and bill it to your room, which you take care of either automatically if you paid by credit card, or you could settle up before you get off the ship at guest services. And there are certain areas where you can pay extra. Palo is a restaurant which is a nicer or a finer dining restaurant option, which you have to reserve ahead of time. We had my parents go there for dinner one night. They really enjoyed it, but that's an additional charge. And there's like certain specialty coffee bar sections where those things would be an additional charge as well. But there really weren't too many places where there were additional charges. Other things that we got upsold on were like the photo packages. There's photographers everywhere, and every time you get your picture taken, you tell them your room number, and then by the end of the trip, they have all these printouts, and also you can also buy them digitally if you want to, and get a USB thumb drive. So that's one upsell that we definitely took advantage of. On the pirate night, there's like a light up pirate plastic mug that the kids can get. That was an upsell. And there's also a couple of gift shops sprinkled throughout the ship. But those are my thoughts. This video has already gotten very long. Thank you so much for anyone who's made it to the end at this point. If there's something specific that you have a question about, feel free to leave in the comments. I'd love to talk to you guys about it there. And hopefully I will see you guys in the next video.
Yo, what's going on?